welcome to Virtual Coffee with the Editor. Gautrain, it was a sad day when we went into lockdown. I know that you've ran a couple of trains every day, system integrity check. Reopening the system, how did you guys formulate the plans that you came up with? And what were the processes that you took? I mean, I saw on social media, I read some of the news articles, and it looked like a very serious process.
It was a very serious process, Philippa. I think to a lot of people, we used to meet every day with Bombela, and so with both the concessionaire and the operating company, the maintainer, and everybody else to be able to check readiness. So first and foremost so what we were lucky with was the fact that we were trying to reopen the system way before the regulations were announced. So a lot of the plans that we were putting in place were actually meant to be for when we were intending to reopen for health workers. So we had an initiative where we were going to reopen the system as a whole for the health workers. And as we reopened for the health workers, what it then meant is that we had plans up front. And those plans were in and around, could we keep these health workers safe? But at the same time, you also have the opposite end of things where the health workers themselves, as you know, they're getting infected and also other things. There was also the fear that they would have been bringing the infections to the system itself. In essence, we then said, could we open completely for essential workers rather than narrowing it to health workers? And how do you manage, doctors, other essential workers and everything else? So that in itself was actually a great thing, because we were able to create a situation up front that enabled us to just think ahead of process. Now, by the time the regulations were announced, what the regulations did is, so we understood simple things. There needed to be social distancing. There needed to be some level of mask wearing. We coined the phrase "no mask, no ride." So in essence, running up to the actual reopening for level 4, we had plans, and those plans had been proposed to the National Ministry on us being able to carry essential workers. And the important issues that came up were very simple. It was like, how do we do social distancing? And not only social distancing on the platforms, but social distancing on the trains, social distancing on the buses, social distancing on our minibuses. And in addition to that, can we do social distancing in and around our ticket vending machines, in and around walking up to the gates? So how do people work with each other, or walk with each other in and around each other while maintaining the 1 meter apart? So, and what really helped was that the original regulations that were launched for level 5 for comments actually contained a lot of the principles that would have been applied later on. And based on the framework that we had from when we made our comments on the first regulations that were issued by the RSR, we then developed a plan that then enabled us to be able to propose the lockdown measures that can be applied. But what that helped with was the fact that we actually suggested, and that became the regulations that helped us into level 4. The department and the RSR actually adopted our logic of doing things. And at that point in time, we're still talking about spray booth signals. Way before the Minister of Labour suggested the issue of temperature screening, we were already testing our first prototype infrared camera temperature scanning on our booths themselves. And the long-term use, everybody keeps on asking, you guys had committed to the booths, what are you going to do with them? Those booths are actually going to be, we're going to add thermal imaging cameras on them, which we have. If you go to the Hatfield booth, you'll see that it has a thermal imaging camera on it. And we actually believe that that camera is much more accurate than a handheld temperature screener. So a lot of the ideas it was about the commuter. So first and foremost, it's got the regulations were secondary. And it was also about the things that we heard from our commuters as they started disappearing from the system in March. So when the fear developed we listened, and we listened more. And the things that they raised as being their concerns about how they are likely to get infected were the things that we used to be able to create the social distancing measures that we've put in place, the sanitization measures that we put in place. To them, it wasn't how fancy the sanitizer was. It was the fact that everywhere they looked, they had one they could actually walk up to and use. Because our original logic was us having these electronic sanitizers that are free of touch and everything else. To them, they said to us, man, you're not going to get that many of them. Get us sanitizers in the stations itself. So there are certain things that we specifically learned on the job. So initially, when I was trying to work out what becomes the platform logic of social distancing. So you can just go on a platform and measure 1 meter apart, 1 meter apart. But then what you get to be able to realize is that there's 1 meter apart to the back and to both sides and to the front. Now, how do you do 1 meter apart? First and foremost is you don't start with the platform. You start with what can the train carry? Because what the train can carry then determines how many people on any one platform can you have. And then from then onwards, from understanding how many people I can carry on a train, then develop the logic of how many people should I have on a platform at any one. So I first literally sat down with a layout of a coach and said, if I had to do social distancing on a train, this seat disappears, this seat disappears, this seat disappears, this seat disappears, this seat disappears. And then I went back and said, do we want to have standing? The challenge with standing is that exiting becomes an issue because the people will stand and people don't want to rub against each other. So you don't want that at all when you're social distancing. No standing at all. So no standing. And eventually we got down to where we only were carrying 40%. If all the seats were used that we had marked out, we were only carrying 40% of the system. And then you go down to simple things. Do I make people sit right in front of each other? And the issue came up, what if the one sneezes? Even if they're wearing a mask, what if they sneeze? So it's simple, basic things. It's what I call the logic of use, rather than it being about you applying the regulations. So the regulations are just a guideline. It's now the logic of use. Then we ended up with alternating the seats. And with alternating the seats, when a coach could carry 40 people standing, suddenly I had lost another 5 seats. Because once I alternate the seats, in the 3-seaters, where I'm supposed to have people sitting across from each other, now I lose 2 seats rather than 1 seat to be able to alternate. So the person must always be sitting across from a seat that is cancelled. And in essence, what that did is it then gave us the number on which I can be able to expect, and on a heavy station like Centurion, can I actually be able to carry enough people on the platform to be able to fill 1 train? And that in itself then led to the next part of the process. When people are walking out of the train, they'll be looking for parts to walk through. And the people who are outside are trying to not get left by the train behind. So could we actually find a way in which the 2 of them can actually be able to, move in and around each other, but without increasing dwell times? Because the minute I say, no, we're going to stop, allow everybody out of the train, and then allow the people that are on the platform, those are different dwell times. So the first system that we designed created dwell time issues. But when we're on site again, you actually have people stand next to each other. So we brought a whole lot of people from Pombela, from our office, and actually tested it on how people would walk out. I had a train park here at Midrand and asked the driver to have the doors open and people walk out. And the first system worked out well, but it had these very big blocks. And those big blocks, you actually use a stopwatch and you time how long it takes somebody to walk from an open door all the way to a path where they'll walk out in between the blocks and to behind the people. because then the walking paths are behind the people, then because there's no cross or conflicting movement. Once you have conflicting movement, you're going to end up with people touching, and the likeliness of infections are there. So you gotta get rid of the conflicting movements on the platform. And then eventually what we decided with is the big blocks that we had made that used to cover one coach, we cut them into two. But when we cut them into two, it reduced the amount of time somebody walks from a door that is open to where they are now behind. And when we did that, we solved the second problem, the dwell times. We had no conflicting movements because people came out of the train and then walked out in both directions from the door to be able to access the path at the back of the platform that makes sure that they don't have conflicting movements with each other. And then the block itself, the middle of it, where people are standing, easily, once people have completely come out of the train, can just go into the train and find a seat. And it's more a process, an iterative process that requires you to think through what you have to do. Then there's the next part of the platform. None of our platforms, no two platforms in the whole of the Gautrain are the same. They serve the same purpose, but they are completely different from each other, completely. And it's all in and around how the building has been put together and everything else. So not only it's about, so we actually developed the system to be largely scalable, so highly scalable. So it goes from where it's at level 4 to level 3 to ultimately where we can go down to people being in and around each other at what do they call it, at a smaller space. But that created a new problem. Once the platform is full, what do you do with the people? So you gotta create a holding area somewhere else. Now, Midrand is simple. I can hold people outside, I can hold people in the unpaid concourse, but again, the issue of conflicting movements comes up when you hold on the outside of the station, on the unpaid concourse. So when you bring them into the paid concourse, then it became much easier on us. So the holding areas have been created already to be able to keep the people back, both going north and going south. We have holding areas for the people to be there. Some stations don't have space. So you go to Rhodesfield, I don't have a holding area. The only space I have where I can create a holding area, it's actually a path where somebody who's on a wheelchair will come out of the lift. And the space for a lift actually takes out, I think that station took out about 20 standing points. Just like that, for me to create a 1 meter space that somebody can run. So we had to so once I had gone through one station, and because I've been working with this for the last 6 years, I know each of the stations. So I knew the stations I needed to worry about was Park, Rhodesfield, and Santin, because of its floors and everything else. So they wouldn't have. So we literally took that train that I had parked here at Midrand and went from one station to the other. One station to the other, and I looked at everything, like literally. So once we had figured out the system in Midrand, then we took the system and adapted it for each of the stations. And then from then onwards, then had to think through. So during the times when we were still going to do the spraying tunnels, where do you place the spraying tunnel? Where do you do the screening, or what do they call it, the temperature screening? Now, you are now more, so you go onto another layer of people to speak to. So that layer of people is now the station managers, or what they call customer services official. Understands the stations, understands how people move around the station. So the flow, the natural flow, and as I go back to the concept, logic of use. It's not what you think is the best. It's not about you developing processes. It's about you working with the logic of use. So on logic of use, they then said, no, but this won't work this way. This is how customers come out of the station, and then they go from their cars into the station and all of that. And some of the things that we thought as people who are designing the system could actually be done this way actually worked out completely different. Because they then said, no, but if you do it this way, you're going to create a hold up or a hold point here, and you now end up with conflicting movements. And so some of the things that we had designed and masked, and every time you make a change, you lose space for standing. Every time. And it's something that you always have to be comfortable with, that you will lose more space for standing. Simple challenges. The first set of bottles of sanitizers that we put up on the stations, the first day that we opened the stations, all of them were gone, because they are nice petite bottles that, you know, somebody could just take and slip into their bag, and they did exactly that. And you know, the consideration of the next person and all of that. So the following day we came back with cable ties. We left it off and we came back with cable ties and tied down the sanitizers that we put down. Now, there's also, once you've developed the system, the walking paths that are at the back of the blocks of where people stand, you gotta go back. So for instance, in Sandton, you've got platform furniture, and that platform furniture is doors to equipment rooms, benches, all these things. You have to think about it. When in one platform, you have none of that. It's just straight through. You can make a walking path. All they have to do is just navigate the columns. In Sandton, suddenly, out of nowhere, you're losing 3 standing spots, because you have to account for the bench. You have to account for, you know, regulations do not allow you to be able to put people standing directly in front of a door that goes to important equipment. It's all these things that now you iterate and you develop further on a localized logic and every station. And in the middle of all of that, Philippa, you can't find service providers. Or service providers are available, but none of them can be able to actually do anything for you. They don't have people. They, you know, there was a day before the minister came to see our system and the reopening. I think it was the Saturday, and we were opening on Monday. The supplier says, I've been running with my people the whole week, the whole last 2 weeks. We haven't had a break, and we're going to take a break. Guess what? I don't have all the decals for all the stations. And you find yourself on the phone going to the supplier, well, if you're not doing this, then we might as well cancel any further orders from you. And it sounds harsh, but it's like we have to do what has to be done. And eventually, at some point in time, I had enough figures to cover all the stations that were going to be, you know, the big stations. So Centurion, Hatfield, and Sandton had to be complete in terms of all the digging that we needed to put up and the standing areas needed. We did all the stations on the first day, on that first weekend, and did everything that needed to be done, but we didn't complete them. So a lot of them had half the capacity, and we knew, we understand the numbers from our stations. So that is another lesson learned, that your ticketing system has to enable you to make decisions on the number of people you will have at what time, and are you likely to experience overcrowding on the platform, and all of that. So that the data that came from our ticketing system was also used to be able to determine what happens on each of the areas. And then there were special stations like Park. The walking out at Park, as it is right now, without social distancing and COVID-19, it's a nightmare. We've ordered new gates, but you know, as the world is right now, I'm only getting those gates next year March. I was supposed to get them now, in order to call it in May, but our supply chain has been disrupted, or the global supply chain has been disrupted to the level that I'm only getting them in next year March. So what that will allow us to do, will allow us to be able to separate out the going into the station and the going out of the station. Overall, it's, you know, that's the some of the logic. Some of the things, like for instance, we had intended to have advertising on the seats that we have cancelled out. So we would, you know, recover some of the costs of what we're not making from the cancelled seat with advertising. I still, one, cannot commit any advertisers. Two is getting a supplier who will design. And as I say, a lot of things were designed on the fly. Right up until today, we still haven't produced them because we don't have enough suppliers that have that type of material that can do what we need to do. So the supply chain of the entire process is a complicated issue.
Did you take a bit of time to see what I'm going to call them counterparts? So what they were doing in France and in Italy and Germany and America. Did you have a look at that? Did you read some of the research that was coming through from like UITP in terms of public transport and rail?
We looked, but nobody had thought as far as we had. In actual fact, Barbara went into a call with the global marketing, her global marketing counterparts of the operator. So our operator is also operating in Morocco, in Algiers, and in the US, and they also now do TFL. And when they saw our plans, they wanted us to tell them how to do it. So there's no playbook for this thing, Philippa. It's you have no manual. It's about you thinking of, okay, so on a normal basis, this is how the commuter uses the system. Now they have to do social distancing while they're trying to get back to their car. They are going to fetch their kid from crash and all sorts of other things. How do you actually enable them to be able to remain safe and you to be able to achieve social distancing with their processes? And nobody around the world had done what we were trying to do. And by the time they saw it, right up until today, I looked at the BART system, their logic of social distancing. I think the only thing I learned from that video was something they were suggesting, but they haven't done. And we are about to do it now. It's, can we actually manage overcrowding by people requesting a seat? And when I'm saying requesting a seat, it's not like you pick a specific seat on the train. You're just simply saying, I am going to travel at this time. And because I'm going to travel at that time, therefore, I would like to be on. So then we are able to manage. So if we know that at that station, at that point in time, there's already enough people, and also the ramp up from the previous stations are saying that this station is going to be full. Therefore, we suggest to them, can you travel earlier or travel a little later?
Kenya is doing the seat reservation.
Yes, Kenya is doing that. So we've got a prototype plug-in to our app that is going to enable that to happen. But one of the things that I have tried to do in everything that we've done. Me, I'm a firm believer, Philippa. In every crisis, there's an opportunity. The booths that we're going to use for spraying and all of that, long-term wise, I'm going to have scanners installed in those. So beyond the thermal imaging scanners, I'm going to have scanners to scan for guns, scan for other things, scan for explosives, and all of that. So that cage itself is now of use to me. And it was already the way we had developed it, that when the spraying stops, what do I do with this aluminum box that I've got? And it's about the lifetime evolution of everything that we do. So similarly, this app that we've developed, we've not only developed it now to manage the COVID-19 issues, we've developed it for it to actually be able to enable something in the future, management of overcrowding. Now, when people long-term wise, in an ordinary system, everybody tries and come in at 7 and try their luck. If we were to be able to create a culture now where people request a seat, then what you're going to find is that long-term wise, it will become part of the way the system is used or part of the logic of use. Some of the things that we've also thought of and we are going to implement are things like creating click and collect services at our stations. So where you are able to sit on the train and order, your Woolworths shopping, and you'll be able to pick it up at the station. It's not a whole shop. It's actually just window. You go up there, you produce your QR code, they scan it, and they bring up your things. You don't get involved with going to the shops. Now, that way, not only are we keeping our customers safe, but we're changing transport into a lifestyle product. And that lifestyle product, we fit into everything that you go through. And so, as I said to you, with a crisis, there's always an opportunity. And to me, this is the biggest opportunity ever. And then secondary to that is that our customer base has changed. our customer base has moved from the car user to now the person who doesn't have a car. Now, this has also been a market that we don't, intentionally market to quite heavily. And, there's a lot of these developments all around. For instance, there's this Munyaka development. It's got 5,000 units in it. You're guaranteed that 5,000 units, probably about 3,000 of those will be people who are young professionals that don't as yet own a car or don't even want to own a car. Now, could I actually create last mile services that services those people? So the base of the Gautrain ridership is going to change from the car user to actually being a lot of these 3, 4 or low-rise walk-ups, people that live there. The young professional is the person that we actually are attracting. And so in all of this, for us, the value lies in what we could become. So I don't see it as a challenge, but I see it more as an opportunity. And to me, and also that has forced us to do is the fact that I don't as yet own the customer through his journey. So could we actually use our CSI to be able to create that plant that seed in a child's head where they come and ride the Gautrain while they're still in school, own them as a student. By its nature, when they become somebody who works, they don't default to buying cars, and rather they go into using our system. And for us, these are the opportunities that COVID-19 is bringing as a whole, rather than it being just about sorting out the social distancing. And as we go forward, the buying of our trains now serves an added purpose. So as the system ramps up, and if we were to ramp up with the social distancing regulations still being in place, we don't have enough rolling stock for us to be able to cater for that market. And therefore, there is an opportune time in which for us to just, that window that just is there, we bring the trains in and then use them now to be able to enable the capacity, the additional capacity that we need. But then long-term wise, we have the system functional in such a way that we have all the trains that we need. So it's about updating and redirecting your strategy rather than you stopping the things you were going to do.
So my last question for you,
Yes.
I don't envy you at all. I think it's been an incredible journey, and I think for you it must have been exceptionally, well, for you and the team, exceptionally stressful. But my other question is I know that you've had the Minister of Transport go through the system and all the rest of it. Have you also done some knowledge sharing with the PRASA team to show them what you've done? Has there been any sharing now that they're about to start phasing in services? Did you guys assist in any way?
Yes, they were here in actual fact on Friday. And if I tell you that people haven't learned what this means, they wanted to be here physically. And this could have been shared with them over, what do they call it, like we're doing now. So they did come here on I'll be honest with you, between us, they're not ready. And the MEC told them straight that in Gauteng, you will only open in August. So they're not going to open tomorrow. So and even in August, I guarantee you now. Oh, so one of the things that I didn't mention right at the beginning is that when we went into lockdown level 5, what we did is, and it's almost a throwaway line in the original regulations, that says the operator is to ensure that they secure their assets. And it's a one-liner. And the implications of that is millions of rand. So what we did is we moved our security to be able to secure all our assets all around.
I think it's a very terrifying situation that the world finds itself in, and having to go through the process as you have, which is extremely stressful. I mean, you're trying to prevent people from getting it and spreading it and give confidence that they're not going to get it on your system.
My latest worry now is that people have this logic of this thing being a 6 degrees of separation type illness. It can happen to other people, not to me. And that is my biggest worry.